it's after lunch. After lunch sessions are always a bit, tough, right? But I hope everyone's awake and all ready to enjoy this session. So you guys know the topic. I will start with, let's just look at the audience first. I'd like to know how many of you are startup founders, like founders or co-founders. I know some of you could be working for startups or you could be investors. Startup founders or co-founders, all right? That's a good mix of crowd. Then I think the advices will be very valid today. I'm sure you guys want to be, taking a lot of good points away from our panelists. So let's get to the panelists then. So we have Giva Kuppusamy. He is the founder of GK Aqua, right? And we have Mr. Top Lim. He's the founder of FinHero. So I let these gentlemen introduce themselves first. So Giva, maybe go with you first.
Okay, thanks Inba and thanks Cradle for inviting. So our business evolved around biotechnology and a local species called udang-gala, and how we have revolutionized udang-gala being a local and orphans animal to be a global brand now. So yeah, so that's pretty much, and we have made the prawns to grow faster, like 3 times faster, and increase the yield by 500%. And one of the very reason I started this company, because Malaysia is centered around so much of biodiversity, yet we are importing almost 60 billion ringgit worth of food. So that was really the tipping point for myself to start this startup like 5 years ago. Yeah.
All right, and Top.
Hey, hi everyone. Thanks, Raj. Thanks, MYStartup, for inviting us. Yeah, so just a quick introduction. It's quite nostalgic coming here because I spent almost 20 years of my life next door, Dell Technologies. I was with financial services. So hence from there, I started FinHero, which is a fintech company focusing on supply chain financing, right? So what the difference we like to bring is we focus more on cash flows to support on businesses. Right now, a lot of the traditional institutions are more collateral-based lending. So there's a huge gap. I think a lot of the startup founders here relate to. Cash flow is a problem, liquidity is a problem, and also, applications for liquidity and grants and loans and whatnot is not the most efficient process today. So FinHero, with our technologies and our ecosystems, we hope to bring liquidity and help these startup and SMEs, bring it to the next level, and most importantly to the global level as well.
All right. So we will go into the topic today, right? We'll start with the first question. As Frida mentioned, we're talking about retrenchment in a global scale right now. The big giants are laying off people. So what do you think about the impact of this global retrenchment on our local ecosystem? And what do you think about the response, right? Response from our government or industry players to minimize that impact on the local ecosystem and also our economy here?
So I go first?
Sorry. This one I think Giva will take.
All right. No worries. So I'm sure not many agri startup companies are here around. I think in Malaysia, in overall, I think we have a lot of technology-based companies are very focused on e-commerce, surveys, e-hailing, and the rest, etc. I think there is a lot of immense opportunity in the area of agri-tech, because food is something. So relating back to the question of recession, global recession, and a lot of people get laid off in terms of workforce, I would say every crisis has an opportunity. So in this perspective, where we come from, during the global pandemic and recession, our business have pivoted a revenue of 10x because food is, whether you're recession, whether people are laid off from the job, you still need to eat, right? And with a country with an import bill of 60 billion ringgit, I think I will strongly advocate that this recession in IT sectors will a perfect feed for many technopreneurs to carve themselves towards food tech industry or agri-tech industry, because the opportunity is immense. As I mentioned, a 60 billion ringgit of import bill. How we want to perfectly cast this stone to be at our advantage. And that, as I said, if investors ask, where's your market? There's an import bill of 60 billion ringgit. And that's the market we are looking at. So in my own perspective and our own experience as a startup, in the tech industry or agri-tech industry, I would perfectly say that it's a blessing from sky. You have to pivot towards something at your advantage. I think this is a very right time for people to start to think about capitalization of their local resources, local demand. And Malaysia have 30 million people. It's a very small population, people would say. But the industry where we come from, like say about fish and aquaculture, we have 50 kilo per capita per year. That's like 1.5 million metric ton of seafood is needed. And captured fisheries is only contributing about 200,000 tons. So there's still about 1.3 million tons of seafood as an import substitution. So yeah.
So you're saying there are a lot of other opportunities among all these, retrenchment and layoffs as well, right?
Definitely, because as I mentioned earlier, people only focused on tech, but there's very less emphasis on science. But the moment you can put an electrical engineer with a biotechnology, they can digitalize what's happened in the laboratory, what happens in the precision farming to a scale of digitalization. I think that's the way forward. Precision farming, vertical farming, you name it. Whatever means to produce food with less, more with less, yeah.
All right, cool. And I think, to help us go through these challenges, the role of the government, definitely you cannot ignore, right? And in terms of policies or programs, what I think some of these key policies or programs that have supported this development, and also do you think they've been effective, like to help our local ecosystem?
Yeah, I think I think I've in the past and recently I also look at other countries. We're trying to expand to other countries. I think in general our government has done a great job to try and support the ecosystem. Right? You compare, you look around at some of our neighboring countries. You don't have that luxury to do a startup or whatever so easily. I think when I look in the room today, and even my peers, we have the luxury to start up what we want to do. Now, however, we also have to understand that in the space that we're in, when we're trying to develop or create these new technologies, new businesses, new ideas, people are playing catch up, right? That includes our agencies, our governments. It's not easy for them to understand, for example, like in my world, fintech world, where we want to tokenize assets and stuff. Like, where does the regulation even begin, right? And of course, what I'm also seeing is the good thing is there's a lot more programs like MYStartup, My Cradle. There's so many grants and programs to help and support. But of course, we got to help ourselves, right? We sit around and complain all day. That's not going to help. So like Giva said, look for the opportunities, look for the grants, look for the applications. It's a lot of work. You got to put in the hours. The applications are long, but there are options there. So I think one of the probably feedback or my ask from the agencies and government is validations of some of these private institutions or VCs that come in and try to help. Are they really trying to help, or are they trying to broker deals and whatnot? So there has to be some validation point and KPIs kept and dashboards and reporting kept so we know who we are dealing with, right? I think from our experiences, there's a lot of inefficiency there. But again, this is a new industry. I think everyone is trying their best, including the government agencies. But we got to help ourselves and help everybody else by also giving these honest, direct feedback so everybody can, grow and improve and grow the ecosystem.
What do you think about the funding ecosystem now, by the way? Do you think it's improving since COVID, or is it still slow?
I think most people, when we think of funding and whatnot, or business loans, we always think of banks, right? So what we're trying to bring differently is we look at non-banking financial institutions. And like earlier I said, the traditional banks, they look at collateral-based lending, where our institutions, we look at more cash flow, right? So there are pockets of newer financing solutions coming. The funding is coming, but again, it's not a perfect world. We just gotta keep on going and keep on looking and ask the right questions.
Right. And going back to the job marketplace thing, right? We look at the current global economic trends, mostly influenced by the COVID pandemic. How do you think it's going to shape the future of our tech industry, and especially the job market, and not just for Malaysia, but for the whole Southeast Asian region?
So I also would like to echo what Tim said on the funding ecosystem. where we started, of course, we did not have any angel investors when we began. I would definitely say the funding ecosystem in Malaysia is very well organized. So we started with Platform Ventures back in 2018, then we graduated to Cradle with a 2 million ringgit ticket size, and that really pivoted our business from, from 300,000 ringgit revenue to 3 million ringgit. So, but what I will emphasize here is actually the chronology event, or the chronology of funding ecosystems. I think it's been scattered in some ways, or been redundant sometime, or in silo. I think this is where I think some efforts can be put in to really streamline, the founders or the inventors can go to from minimum viable product all the way to commercialization in a very structured manner, right? And from my personal experience, and that the time came for us to really go through the Dead Valley curve, we've been offered a funding from Singapore Enterprise with a condition that we have to be 100% Singapore company. And of course, during the time, me being myself, and I rejected the offer and stayed put here, and that's the right time, Cradle came with the funding of 2 million ringgit. So one learning curve here, I think the ticket size from funding agencies have a lot of meaning to play, or role to play. If like a company get 500,000 or company get a 2 million ringgit, that makes hell of difference in terms of how they can break through the barrier. So that's to echo on that earlier question, because I wish to share. And also on the VC side, I think in Malaysia, especially like business like us, biotech, we do prawns, they don't see it. The valuation we get is so poor until you are rather go for a debt financing as a cash flow positive company. And secondly, also, they are very short-sighted with how they want to fund startups in Malaysia, because I have not yet to see any VCs are really putting in a lot of emphasis into crafting. We all talk about food security, but where is the measures, right? We go to banks, like we are like with Allianz Bank. Our business transaction, not to boast, around 1 million ringgit a month, revenue-wise. We asked for a 500,000 overdraft facility. And the bank said they are not comfortable to lend money to us, or give us an OD, not lending money. Yeah. So this emphasis is, I think, who want to tell that particular bank or private bank that, hey, you should, because Bank Negara set aside billions of dollars of funds for food security, and how this trickling down from the allocation all the way to the end. I think that's really something I think agencies or government need to really look carefully into, because a small startup like us with a strong cash flow can't get that kind of overdraft facility. How you expect any others could actually go and benefit from this? I think that's not something easy. Yeah, and I forgot your question.
Just that, Giva, maybe we should talk later and see how we can.
Funding is always a very interesting question, right? There are a lot of answers.
But I just want to say, just extending what Giva said, I think the fact is, Giva, myself, we've actually received grants. Luckily, he's received a much larger grant. I received 100,000 from Digital Penang. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, these funds, these grants, it does exist, it does happen. They're not something that is just floating around, but you must put in the work, and you must have a good value proposition. Money doesn't come free, it doesn't come easy.
Yeah, definitely. And the ecosystem has to come into play as well, right? Because the grant is not enough, right? Like you said, the banks has to come into play, but that, comes into policy making as well. Sometimes you have to probably poke the bank to, kind of, hey, help the
That's why I'm prompting today, so that they might hear this, to all the way to the top management in Allianz Bank, and they rectify this mistake, because they came out with a very unprofessional answer saying that not comfortable. You can just decline with X amount of reasons, but not to supposed to say not comfortable. That's very, very impolite, I would say.
You need to attend the dinner with the YB.
Definitely, I will. I already
talk
registered.
about these things. All right. Okay. Then the next question, right, about the job market. We are looking at the global economic trends, largely influenced by the pandemic, that we are still, in a way, I think the declaration was 2 days ago, right? Where finally they lifted it. It's no longer a global emergency, but COVID is still around. A new strain was just, I think, announced last week or something. So COVID is still around. So largely a lot of the things that happen now, the trends are influenced by the pandemic. So what do you think, how this is going to shape our ecosystem and also the job market for this region?
So where we come from, for instance, now there is a lot of incentive for hiring for graduates. So we just did like 15 of them for like 3,000 ringgit basic salary to start in our company. So there's many incentive I think startups can leverage on. And secondly, sometimes we see the capabilities, like we always say, oh, Malaysians, they go overseas, they don't come back. From my own experience, I just recently invested in one small startup, and 2 of them are actually the top brains. They're GPA scholars, went to Michigan State University and studied biotechnology. And learning from that, I thought, okay, can I do more of this? Because we got a lot of problem statement in the value chain, which itself can be a startup idea. And goodness, I wrote to JPA. I think I registered in what the portal name for JPA scholars, all their resumes. Until today, our company have not been even approved. Right? One end, we are dying to recruit some great talents. The other end, policymakers are saying, hey, our biotech graduates, our life science graduates are jobless, right? So we are trying to draw a line where is the miscommunication is, right? So coming back to your question, I think with unemployment rate, with recession, I think it's, again, if there a lot of effort are put into connecting the science and technology, I think Malaysia can really pivot through exporting technology, because we have 700 million people in Southeast Asia. We speak almost the same language, eats the same food, and our culture and communities are very similar. So in that perspective, I think it's a very immense opportunity for us to take this as an opportunity.
Yeah. I think in the region itself, there's so many cross-collaboration and partnerships that can happen, right? Which sometimes I think we overlook that, because we're always looking at Silicon Valley and,
exactly,
and other bigger markets, right? And talk back to the government initiatives, right? We're looking at programs and policies. But like you said, you guys have both received grants from government agencies. So what do you think about government investing into startups? So grant is one thing. That's just like an assistance. They don't take anything. But what do you think about like government agencies or some kind of programs where they actually invest into startups? Do you think that works? Is it effective? Or is that a bad idea? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting concept of government agencies coming to privatization. I personally think that's not the most effective way to utilize our budget. Also grants as well, right? It's, giving free money and all that. We have to always go back to, the KPIs. What are we expecting out of these things, right? Even in private institution or government institution, we must always ask that question. What is our expected return when we put in this money? And I think that's where even private sectors and the government sectors has a very big gap is, keeping track of results, right? We're very lucky that we're a very resource-rich country and, governments can give these grants. But what I have not seen a lot of is actually performance tracking, KPIs. What did this 100,000 get back to the country or for whoever it is that gave them? So I think in terms of validation, keeping track of performance, reporting, I think these are all lessons that we can share with everyone, whether successful or unsuccessful. These numbers and all that, I always say numbers don't lie, right? So if we keep on tracking these, publish it, be transparent, I think we can make that whole funding process much more efficient than it is today.
Right. So you think there needs to be more accountability, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely right, because if you're a private investor, of course, you're going to hound on your startups that you invest in, make sure they use your money wisely. And I think government should do the same thing, right? Any agencies that invest, they should look at the startups that they are supporting and see how. I think nation building should be an agenda as well. I mean, one thing is for people to take government grants and make themselves successful and be a champion in the field. But also, how much do they contribute to nation building? I think, what do you guys think of that?
I think exactly that's the whole point, because if government is coming out with incentive for grants and etc., the KPI cannot be just based on the bottom line of the company, or if you would say, where I run GK more into tech for good, right? Means we started in 2017, when Cradle Grant came in 2020, we had 4 employees, now we have grown up to 48, turning to be 50 now. So employment opportunity can be also another KPI. But this again goes back how much funding they are receiving. We were very lucky, I would say, to get the 2 million during that right point of time to scale up the business. Not many will have the opportunity. I think even now they have gone down the ticket size to 500,000 to 100,000 ringgit. So again, accountability, as you said, that's very important. But going back to the whole thing, right? Traveling around, be it in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, I think Malaysia has a very perfect ecosystem for tech startups. The policies are there, the fundings are there. I think it's more of synergies, if you would say. I think funding ecosystems also need to look into redundance of the businesses rather than being more redundant of the same. I think it's time to pivot to have more synergies than, if you want to make one company to be a unicorn, probably that's very difficult. But if you see there's 5 different businesses in the value chain can break through from the beginning to the end, you put them together, I think that together can pivot towards a unicorn effort. I think that would be a much more liberal way of thinking rather than I want to do things in isolation, you want to do things in isolation. I think that's not really something we want to endeavor.
I mean, I just want to add as well is, funding is not the means to an end, right? The business, there are other parts rather than funding. And you would see a lot of business startups or startup businesses that started with nothing, right? So I see also a lot of my peers are not focusing on all these unicorn valuations and all that kind of stuff, and they kind of lose focus on the fundamentals of the business. Funding is important, but that's not the only thing that will make your business successful. I always say 99% hard work, 1% luck, right? It's the same thing with funding. A lot of people use it as an excuse, oh, I don't have funding from this, but we got to stick to the fundamentals, and funding, it's there, you got to look for it. Some are lucky, some are not, but you got to keep on going.
Right. I mean, that's what entrepreneurship is all about, right? I mean, that's just another challenge for entrepreneurs to fix. I mean, for me, when people say, I don't launch something because I don't have the money, it's a valid point, but that shouldn't be the only reason for you to give up, right? I mean, that's where the challenge begins, right? And we have seen a lot of those stories. I mean, you don't have to go far and look at Silicon Valley, even here, back home, right? There's so many inspirational stories that we can see, entrepreneurs that have done amazing things with very little. So I think as an entrepreneur, that's also what you have to look at, not just go around looking for funding and just asking for money, but look at in the mirror and say, what can I do? What do I bring to the table, right? I think that's also very important, right? And I want to go to the next question, right, Giva? I've been hearing about a recession since before COVID, right? It's been many years, but every year we talk about a recession that is coming soon. And then now experts are saying it's coming this year, right? Some said, so last year they said it's this year, and this year they're saying end of this year. Do you think there is going to be like a major recession coming, and should startups here be worried about it? Or do you think it's going to be, we can do this?
All I know, I'm happily hiring people, so never fired anyone in the organization unless they resign voluntarily. So, I mean, whether recession is coming or not with the global economy, with geopolitical stand, with wars going around, I think, if you really dissect different issues on their own way, I think Malaysia is really in a very unique proposition, I would say, because if there is an opportunity for us to export and earn in US dollars, and that's what we do, right? So I think with a very good infrastructure development in the country, with very good support in terms of economic growth and more exportable commodities or goods or services, I think that's something we want to more focus on. Because I would say for global economy or recession, again, people still need to do what they need to do. I can't be like, isolating myself in my house and say, okay, there'll be some stuff is coming up and I can't really export my shrimps to Russia and therefore I have to let go my business. No, I think tomorrow is just another day. So you just have to work for today, not to worry so much on tomorrow. But again, as a healthy business, as long as your bottom line is fine, as Tom was saying, that you don't keep on raising funds and funds. I think, but this is where many startups get different idea about next round. I think the question of whether you have enough capital to run your business and scale up organically probably will be much wiser to do in the current situation.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think when you look at the technical definition of recession is, I think, 2 quarters in a row of a negative GDP or something, right? Now, when you look at GDP and all that, that's like macroeconomic stuff, right? That doesn't really affect our day-to-day stuff, right? So like what Giva is saying, you got to focus, look what is real to us, what's impacting us. I don't think the GDP shrinking 0.1% is going to kill us tomorrow, right? So, let's focus on what's real. I think one thing we have to be aware of is, all these media about recession, all this negative stuff, there are intentions maybe to move the markets for various reasons. But, as an SME or a startup, we got to focus on, what really matters and how we're going to drive this forward.
Yeah, and I think maybe the pandemic has taught us that, there are worse things than just an economic slowdown or a recession, right? I mean, personally, in the last 3 years, I think we've seen a war break out in Ukraine. We've seen a long pandemic that is, stretching. And while it has caused issues, it has created a lot of opportunities as well. I think a lot of startups have done well, pivoted, and done great things. Digital transformation is, at its peak. So I guess, like you said earlier, right, opportunities are always there. So when you look at these negative things, there's always opportunities as well. Yeah, and that's great. And I think looking at our ecosystem as well, I think we are bouncing back. I think safely say that we are bouncing back. We're doing much better since 2020. And going back to the funding, right? Earlier we spoke about government funding. What do you think about private funding ecosystem? How hard it is to get funding from a private institution? And do you think we can do more to encourage more private institutions to come and invest in tech startups? Because I think even recently when you look at a lot of these fundraising news, right? They're very traditional businesses. The big exits and acquisitions, they're not tech startups. So what can we do to encourage more investment into tech ecosystem?
I think in the startup world, I think what I've seen the past 5 to 10 years is there was a lot of focus on valuations, market shares, and all this crazy stuff, right? And you see a lot of companies that are listed and all that, but they're still not profitable. I think that phase is gone, right? And the private institutions, private investors always looks for bottom line, right? Very simple. If I give you X amount, what am I going to get back? That's always the question. So the only way to answer that is that your business can generate profit. Now, of course, there's a reality that, especially in technology business, you need to invest, right? You need to invest, and the first few years, it's like raising a little baby, right? The first few years, you got to teach it and all that. And those are the years where the investment goes and it bleeds. But ultimately, you must have a path to profitability. If you don't have a path to profitability in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it is, then you need to re-look into your business. So going back to that, the question is, yes, definitely there is private funding. Fortunately, I've got funding from angels and all that, all from the private sector, my friends and family, whatever it is. But there needs to be a path to profitability. And again, you got to just, share or keep on doing the pitches. It doesn't come easy. You got to do the work. So it's there, but you got to have a focused business plan. And profitability, I believe, should be the focus for all businesses still.
To echo on Tim, right? Fundraising is always an art, I would say. Valuation is an art. It's always a willing buyer, willing seller. So sometimes we play our strategy right. For recently, right, we have launched another subsidiary startup focused on feed ingredient for our main business. And for that business, I just went across the road to Singapore and met with the investors, and we said, hey, you got all the treasury, because with Hong Kong, with riots, most of the family office, about 400 over family office moved to Singapore. So with that opportunity, I said, look, guys, you guys have the treasury, we have the biodiversity, we have the market opportunities, and we have the people, right? Why not you bring your money, your funds across the road and invest here? And of course, as a spin-off benefit, probably you can secure food security, because Singapore have 30% self-sufficiency by 2030. forget about doing fish in vertical blocks because that's just energy will be crisis, water will be crisis, and disease will be crisis because it's not meant to be done that way. And as far as we see, land is a lot. I mean, for our own company, we just got 1,000 acre of land in Pahang Rompin with 250 ringgit per acre per year and leased to us for 30 plus 60 years. That's 90 years. Probably I wouldn't even be around. So taking that into consideration, right? So as soon as I came back, I posted on my LinkedIn. The local VC start to text me, say, hey, can we revisit your pitch deck? And you, so this is some strategies. We look into it. But what drives that effort is we want to be, we don't want to run away to Singapore just to get money from them and become 100% Singapore company. But there is ways and means you can actually raise funds as well by leveraging what is the current issues in facing both countries, right? So funding is an issue here, food is an issue there, and I think with 6 million population across the causeway and 30 million here, I think for more startup to come up with the similar ideas, and once they fund into something similar and they see a success story, the more will follow, the more success will come. So I think entirely depending on governments or even the local VCs, I think we also need to broaden up. I think this is our experience learned here, because we don't get good valuation and we always get knocked down with very poor valuation and poor equity fundings here. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for local startups to secure like private investment, right? Why are Malaysian startups not as sexy? Is it simply because our market is too small, or are there other reasons? What do you think?
I think it's always timing, right? You meet all the wrong people who don't sync with you from day one. I think chemistry is something you really need to study about what people really, whether they are interested to fund you or not. You might like seeing them, you share your pitch there, you go through the due diligence, you share the data room, 6 months down the road, nothing happens, right? And if, from our own experience, we met one investor, we presented to him, he said, I like the business, come and see me next week, I'll give you the check, within 1 week. And we spent 1 entire year to raise the same amount of money. Yeah.
It's the right
people.
Chemistry, right?
Yeah, right chemistry with right people, yeah.
Top. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, the numbers don't lie, right? You know, and Giva is just right. You know, you meet the right people. You know, my round of investor, there was one round that took me 15 minutes, right? Literally 15 minutes. And there are others which taken 8 months, 12 months. So there's no right and wrong formula. Sometimes it's just a bit of luck. So yeah, you just gotta keep on going and don't stop, you know.
All right. And in the...
You need the money. Otherwise, focus on the business.
Okay, and last year, we got a new government now. You know, and of course, after a lot of changes, right? Recently, we've had a lot of changes in terms of government. And what do you guys think about, you know, the stability of the government? You know, how does it contribute to the ecosystem? And like, what is your personal wish for it?
I would say political stability, as everyone else wish for it as a day-to-day. But changes of governments or changes of anyone in the leadership doesn't really change the actual problem on the ground. If we are importing 60 billion ringgit worth of food every year, and that gonna remains whoever it comes, and it's only question
People still need to eat, right?
whether they're gonna solve the issue or not, and how they're gonna solve it. So I think that goes back to that, yeah.
I think I have to be very careful what I say here, but no, I think, look, on a positive note, I think Malaysia, you know, despite all the challenges we have, I think our politics is relatively stable. You know, my mother's Thai. Like I look at Thailand, it's going, you know, it's very unstable there compared to what we have. And just now, YB Steven Sim, I think, you know, that was a breath of fresh air, right? You know, him wanting to hear the feedback. And I think that's our role, right? Our role is to always give the feedback and to have whoever it is in the government be accountable, right, for what they want to do or what they do and how they spend it in tax money. And I think it's our job to always ask the right questions, right? And I think that's more of an Asian culture where we're a bit more passive. But I think in Malaysia, it's a country where we can speak loudly and freely and give that feedback. So, you know, whoever it is can hear us, whether it's through the media or through events like this. But we keep on pushing. You can see the change in the government. It takes years for things like this to happen, but we need to do our part and keep on giving the feedback so we can improve together.
Right, yeah. And in terms of opportunities, I think, regardless of which government we've had, right? If I look back to the last 10 years, I've been a community builder for about 10 years now. All the governments have always been very supportive of entrepreneurship. I think they've always had a lot of government agencies really, keen to grow the ecosystem. There's so many programs, so many policies. And that has always been around. Different level of effectiveness, different methods, different way of implementing, different prime ministers. But I think the Malaysian government has always been very supportive of entrepreneurship on the ground, and I think that has always been around there. But as entrepreneurs, right, we cannot just sit and just expect everything to be given to us, right, to be thrown on our lap. I think like Top said earlier, we have to do the work, put in the work, go out there, look for the opportunities. The opportunities are there, whether it's government, private, but if you don't go out, look for those opportunities, you're not going to get it. If you don't go out, prove yourself. You don't go out, show yourself. If you just sit in front of you, behind your screen and just code all day, nobody's going to know you exist, right? You have to come to events like this, network with people, meet potential investors, talk to people from Cradle. These are the kind of opportunities that, as entrepreneurs, you have to always look out for, and then when you see it, you grab it, right? Any final words before we wrap up the session? I think that's all the time we have. MC is already sent by.
No, I'm fine. I've said enough, I think.
Top, anything to wrap up?
Just a quick one is, if you're an entrepreneur, never stop fighting. The problems is there. Our job is to solve the problems. So just keep on going, and numbers don't lie.
All right, that's a good line, right? Numbers don't lie. So guys, put the work in. As entrepreneurs, you always have to, prove to people that you have what it takes, whether they're investors, partners, your customers. It's all about the effort that you put in and work really hard. Someday, you might, get a 2 million grant. You might raise money from investors, and you can scale up your business and grow, and and then, of course, hopefully contribute towards nation building. I think that's something very important as well, right? While we try to make money, how do we help this nation to grow and become better, right? So with that,
Thank you.
I'll wrap up the session.
Thank you very much,
Thank you so
gentlemen.
much.